elegance, Apple. What more could you possibly want? Meet the M1 MacBook Air.
When I moved out to study engineering in university last year, I was in a market for a new laptop. I needed something that was thin and light and had an all-day battery life to use for my long school days, but it also needed to have good performance for me to make my YouTube videos. And at that time, the choice was obvious. Everyone was talking about how good the M1 MacBooks were, and frankly, it was the perfect laptop for me with all the features that I wanted. The build quality of the MacBooks were amazing, as it has a great keyboard, trackpad, and display. The new M1 chip was extremely powerful over its Intel counterparts, but it was also efficient enough to have a long enough battery life that could last me all day. And after over a year of using the M1 MacBook Air pretty much every single day, I still think it's the best laptop for students to buy, and I'm here to tell you about my experience with it. And also, thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Let's start off with some history. Back in 2008, a few months before the first Iron Man movie came out, the first ever MacBook Air was taken out of an envelope by Steve Jobs, and it shocked the world for how thin and light a computer could be at the time. And like the Iron Man movies, they kept updating the MacBook over the years, making small iterative upgrades, performance and design-wise. It wasn't until the fall of 2020 when Apple completely changed the laptop market with the introduction of the M1 chip, promising extreme performance usually found in thicker gaming laptops in the form factor of an Ultrabook. And let me just say, the amount of performance in these little machines were unheard of, especially coming in at 2.8 pounds and 0.16 inches at its thinnest point. And oh, just a fun fact, it's the same weight as a human brain as well. But not only is the MacBook thin and light, the build quality is actually one of the best you'll find. Some laptops feel really cheap and plasticky to keep the weight down, but the MacBook is built fully out of aluminum and it feels really solid and premium. And after a year of throwing this laptop around my bag and not really taking great care of it, it hasn't really suffered much damage other than a few scratches and maybe a small dent here and there. And that's really the main impression of this laptop, durable and premium. This is also true when you open the MacBook up. The hinge is just stiff enough to open with one finger, which is a major flex by the way, and the screen doesn't flex at all, unlike other laptops. The keyboard and trackpad are also absolutely amazing. The scissor switches on the MacBook are super duper satisfying to type on, as it feels super crisp and easy to press. The touchpad is also one giant sheet of glass that actually tricks you into thinking you pressed it down with the haptic motors. Gestures work flawlessly, and it's just much better than what you'll find in a Windows laptop. And speaking of that, the speakers basically blow out any laptop speaker you'd find, as it gets really loud and sounds rich and full. It's definitely worked really well for watching videos and movies with my friends. Now, you might have seen that Apple has come out with a bunch of newer laptops, like the beautifully industrial M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pros, or the M2 MacBook Air with its newer, slightly controversial notch display. While it does make the M1 MacBook Air look ancient with its thick bezels, it's still a great display, and honestly, it just makes no difference. Like advertised, the screen instantly wakes up when you open the lid, and Touch ID works flawlessly every single time. It gets pretty bright at 400 nits, which is definitely good enough to use outdoors, and the colors are very accurate too, which is definitely a must for doing any kind of photo or video editing. And personally, I think the 16:10 aspect ratio is such a great feature, and definitely much better than using a 16:9 screen from typical laptops. For typing notes on documents or doing research on the browser, that little bit of extra vertical space really makes a difference. I do find the screen still a little small to use when I need a ton of apps open, so I do connect it to my ultra-wide monitor at home for better productivity. I do have to warn you that with the M1 MacBook Air, there is a limitation where only one external monitor can be connected at a time, which is honestly pretty disappointing. You know what's not disappointing though? Courses from this video's sponsor, Skillshare. If you've never heard of Skillshare before, today's your lucky day. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of online classes to help you learn, explore, and discover new skills, and it's honestly changed my life. When I first started this YouTube channel, one of my first purchases online was a Skillshare subscription, and with it, I spent many nights binging courses for kickstarting my first YouTube channel, from big YouTubers like Marcus Brownlee to other courses on studying and being productive from Ali Abdaal and Thomas Frank, and even cooking to make myself more enjoyable meals. And the best part about Skillshare is that there's so many high quality classes from different categories that you'll always have something to learn once you master a specific skill. It's amazing for exploring new hobbies, kickstarting your own side hustle, and finding ways to improve your lifestyle. And if you're interested in changing your life for the better, the first 1,000 people to use my link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. You definitely won't regret it. Anyways, back to the laptop. Now, we can't talk about Apple Silicon without talking about performance and, more importantly, efficiency. When it came out back in 2020, the performance of the M1 chip basically blew the rest of the Ultrabooks out the water, and even some gaming laptops too, and right now it's still no slouch. If you don't know what the M1 chip is, it's basically Apple's custom-made computer chip that they have optimized for their own MacBooks. This gives the MacBook a huge advantage over the previous Intel chips MacBooks have used before because Apple can now closely connect and optimize macOS and the internal laptop chips for a massive leap in performance and efficiency. It's completely different from the old slow Intel chips, and I can assure you that these laptops will be able to last for years before showing any sign of slowing down. As a heavy laptop user, I usually leave over 10 apps open with hundreds of Chrome tabs for different projects, and all of them can still run smoothly without a hitch. This was a lifesaver as an engineering student because I would be working on assignments from a ton of different courses at the same time, and I didn't have to worry about anything crashing or closing tabs I was working on because the M1 chip can just power through it all. And trust me, being able to switch between projects, apps, and different tabs without any slowdowns really let you be more productive and efficient when you're working. And you know what they say, time is money. This does change a bit when it comes to really heavy workflows such as 4K video editing. Most photo and light video editing will definitely be a breeze on the MacBook, especially now that developers had time to optimize their apps, but if you're thinking of doing heavy 4K video editing with a lot of layers and graphics, then you definitely want to look at the newer and more expensive MacBook Pros. But to be honest, most students won't be doing heavy 4K video editing, so it doesn't really apply to them. Another sore point about the M1 or any MacBook's performance though is when it comes to games. First of all, there are barely any games for you to play, and why would you buy a MacBook to do that in the first place? But honestly, this is a good thing for most of you students out there since you'll now be less likely to game and more likely to finish your assignments on time. Win-win situation. But anyways, the beauty of this chip is how efficient it is while having such great performance. In fact, it's so efficient that Apple didn't even need to put a fan in this laptop, which means you'll never hear that annoying spinning sound of fans ever again. And in most cases, the laptop doesn't warm up either, except when doing very heavy workloads like intense video editing, where the chip will be more power hungry. And this efficiency carries on with battery life as well. The battery on the new Apple Silicon Macs are absolutely amazing and honestly game-changing. For light usage like using Chrome or Office apps for school, I can get through a full day easily, or even sometimes 2 or 3 days without charging. And as a student, this is a godsend since I no longer need to worry about bringing a charger to school or finding outlets in classrooms. And even when I'm doing more intensive tasks like video editing, I still get around 5 hours of battery life, which is definitely great. This is much better compared to most Windows laptops, and the great thing about the MacBooks is that you don't lose any performance while on battery life, unlike Windows. And after using this for over a year, I've realized that the battery did start to degrade a little, and right now my maximum capacity is only at 87%. But then again, I've used this laptop very heavily in the past year, always using extremely heavy workflows and charging the laptop multiple times a day. But we can't talk about MacBooks without talking about the Apple ecosystem, which for students is so useful. For those of you with Apple devices such as an iPhone or an iPad, you have access to features like AirDrop where you can easily send files between your devices, Universal Clipboard which lets you copy things from one device and paste it directly on the other, and also if you have an iPad to take notes, it works amazingly with the MacBook with many other features, but I'll talk about that in another video, so be sure to subscribe. So if you came into this video with the question of whether or not the M1 MacBook Air still holds up today, you should have your answer by now. When I bought this laptop over a year ago, I thought it was the best laptop for students to buy, and a year later, my opinion hasn't changed at all. Some of you may be looking at the new M2 MacBook Air as well, but to be honest, the price bump really doesn't make it worth it, especially if you're on a tight budget. The experience will be exactly the same as the M1, and you won't notice the more premium features of that laptop. And instead of spending extra money on the M2 version, I really recommend all of you to get the 512GB storage and 16GB RAM configuration. You'll get better performance and it'll definitely help you future-proof the laptop. And honestly, 512GB of storage should be the standard by now, as even for the lightest users, 256GB of storage will run out really quickly. 16 gigs of RAM is also a must if you want to be able to run multiple apps at the same time without running into app crashes or freezes. Also, if you're a student and looking to save some money, remember to use a student discount on the Apple website, as they're even giving a free Apple gift card right now if you purchase a laptop during their back to school promotion. You can also look around the Apple refurbished store, which also has some really sweet deals for essentially new MacBooks. But anyways, I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, please smash that like and subscribe button for more student videos like this. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Alright, have a good one guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.